Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner that has a product, service, or message that you truly believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind the scenes look at real world networking and marketing tactics while leveraging LinkedIn to get what you have in front of many more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode. I have Josh Sanabria with us today, and interesting background, getting a degree and his master's in architecture, but then moving into the digital space with a company called Engage, which I love. So many of you that listen or watch this podcast, you know how much my wife and I love getting feedback from the people that we're connected to, quizzes, assessments, basically creating as much organic interaction as possible. That's how you can really move the needle of a business forward. And obviously, Josh has mastered that himself with his company Engage. So we're going to talk about all that and more. So Josh, again, welcome to today's episode.
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's dive in. Obviously, interesting background, getting your master's in architecture and then obviously getting into the digital space. What was that transition like? Again, going from the architectural world to
Yeah,
obviously owning your own business world. So what was that little period of time like for you, and how did that transition take place?
sure. So I would actually say it's not so much a transition as two parallel roads. So I worked for a couple of corporate architecture firms, and then in 2018 started GoArchitect, which is a urban planning and architecture firm. And then because of that and the clients that we have, for example, we work with a lot of school districts who have to do a lot of community engagement with neighbors, parents, staff members, that kind of stuff. We noticed a opportunity to make a survey tool or a community engagement tool, and we had already been involved with a lot of that on the ground community engagement. So we knew what they were looking for. And then we also had been involved with creating other pieces of software. So I'm also a programmer, and one of our full time staff members is a programmer. So we were like, well, we see the need. Let's take a chance and create something that solves our own problems in this very niche corner of the world. And so that's how we created Engage. So we are a full-time urban planning architecture firm with this sort of startup within the firm, if you will.
Now, if you were to look back on your time, not just in undergrad, but in graduate school, what would you
Sure.
say is the biggest lesson that you learned going through that process that you really carried that lesson with you into owning your own business as you do today?
Well, I think maybe like a lot of people who are entrepreneurial, I've always had that personality or that aspect to my personality. So, for example, in school, I was president of one of the student associations for architecture students. Um, and we had like a little store, for example, that was part of our association. And prior to me being president, the store was pretty mediocre, and I worked over the summer and went in to our little shop and fixed everything up and threw a bunch of stuff away and replaced everything, and then brought it back the next year, and we were able to make way more money and just have a little bit more of a successful student association. So that's kind of a small example, but there were many other little projects that I played around with all throughout undergrad, all through grad school. Even when I worked for other companies, other corporate firms, I always was paying attention and was part of like a local entrepreneurs group in the town that I lived in. So I think I was just waiting for the right thing rather than trying to just randomly start something. It was more like, oh, okay, this could have worked. Let's give it a try. And if it didn't work, I moved on and just kept trying, basically. So
Mm.
yeah, keep your eyes open and keep trying, I guess would be the lesson.
I love that there's no failing, there's just lessons learned and obviously, moving forward. And, you know, I
Yeah.
think being niche specific, I think is really interesting. Is there anything growing up that really kind of drew you towards the architectural world?
Oh yeah. I've always loved architecture. I think having the chance to travel to different places. My family is from various parts of the world. My dad is from Mexico. My mom grew up in Singapore. Um, I had family members near New York City, and I used to live near Los Angeles. So I always was bouncing around and seeing different parts of the world and how different people live and the design of different cultures. Again, my grandmother, I was very fortunate to be able to go to different places with her. So I think I always had that appreciation. And I live in Chicago, which is obviously a great place for architecture. So I'm always walking around and noticing buildings and details and things like that. And, there's actually quite a bit of a parallel, I think, between architecture and other fields because a lot of it is about creative problem solving, where you do have to balance design and functionality with, of course, costs and user experience. We usually think of as UX, UI as a digital thing, but in very literal ways, the way you experience a building or a house or an office building, whatever it is, it's the same concept. And there's a lot of parallels between architecture and other forms of design. So I think it's a holistic thing, and I enjoy a lot of parts of it.
Now, let's move into Engage.
Hmm.
You know, uh, with everything that's going on with social media and the age of engagement that we're in, we're always looking to create, I would say, a connection between ourselves as the business owner and obviously the people that we're looking to engage with online. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of like assessment and engagement things out there. To the audience that is not familiar with Engage, why don't you tell them a little bit about obviously
yeah,
how Engage works and what really makes it different from other stuff that's out there?
definitely. So the key differentiator is the sticky notes tool. So basically, the sticky notes question type is something that we created with Engage, and it allows you to upload an image. In our case, it can be a image of a site or a group of buildings, for example. And then we can ask a question like, what areas of this school campus do you feel the most comfortable on? And we show the image. And then the respondent, or the person receiving the survey, can click anywhere on the image to leave a sticky note, and they can type their response. And we can have sticky notes of different colors. They can leave, multiple sticky notes, all that kind of stuff. And then they can submit their response to that survey. So that action of where you're placing the feedback and what you said is a feature that we were not able to find in any other tool. Every other survey tool, you can maybe upload an image and a static piece of text, or, maybe you can like select from a list or something. But that physical action, if you will, or similarity to a physical action was brand new. And it actually mirrors quite literally the exact activity that is done with in-person community engagements all around the country. So I actually just went to one a couple days ago for a project here in Chicago, and the group had, printed boards on easels, and there were dozens of people in the room, and you had to leave your feedback. And one of the methods that you could leave your feedback was you literally write on a sticky note and you post it on the board. Right. So that physical action of community response is relatively familiar to most people, but it has a lot of limitations, right? You have to print the board, you have to have the sticky notes, you have to have pens, people have to go to the place to respond. Even once they write their sticky note, what, can you read what they said? Are they writing in English or in a language that you can actually understand? And then let's assume everything goes perfectly. Well, are you getting some intern to type up all of those sticky notes? Like, how is that information actually making it to any sort of decision maker? So there's a lot of those kind of potential gaps or potential pitfalls that I faced many, many times doing all of these community engagement events. And I was like, well, why don't we just create this exact interaction, but digitally? So now we can send that sticky note survey to literally thousands of people at one time. People can place their notes. We can see where the notes are being placed, what people are saying, what colors they are leaving, which might be important. For example, blue could be a positive note and yellow could be a cautionary note. And you can have people leave both of those. So this is a long way of basically saying this sticky notes feature is one of a kind and it was created to solve the exact issues that we face with large scale community engagement for at least public projects in our case.
Now, do you see this expanding past just the niche market that you're in? So
Yeah.
again, a lot of the people that listen and watch this podcast are coaches, consultants, service providers, solopreneurs.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that it's not for? And if there are sub niches that could benefit from this, who are they?
Yeah. So the tool is available for everyone. First of all, you can go to engagebygo.com and you can sign up for free and you can use it. So, what you use it for, I think, is best suited for any person or any project that is visually based. So, anything where you're trying to gather feedback off of an image where it matters where they're saying what they're saying, right? So let's say you have, I don't know, a piece of fashion design or something. You could send that survey to potential buyers or potential customers, and those buyers could place sticky notes on an image of a different collection of clothing pieces, right? It could be a way to gather leads because you can basically partner that sticky notes question with other questions. For example, you could have a sticky notes question where you ask something about a piece of clothing, and then the very next question is an email capture where you offer them a discount code. And because we integrate with Zapier, which is like a connector between apps, you can send that email to your email marketing platform. So it also could be, a good lead generation, customer follow-up, customer feedback or potential customer feedback. There's tons of like little things that you can do to make it work for your industry.
No, I love that because, as a company grows and expands, and this is what my wife and I always talk about, is that, yeah, when you start out, people are maybe niche specific. They help a specific demographic, and then as things continue to grow and evolve, you realize that the solution that you're providing for someone's problem that they may be having does kind of check the box for other people, which I think is just a big benefit because you can
Sure.
still cast that narrow net, but at the same time, it still allows you to bring in other people organically. And I think the other
Yeah.
thing that people need to realize is as businesses continue to grow and evolve and continue to change, there's also going to be new advances, and there are differentiating factors between one tool to another. There's a
Right.
lot of things out there, but my wife and I truly believe is that when you love something and it works for you and it's solving your problem, um, you know, chances are it's going to help solve the problems that other people may be having. Um,
Hopefully. Yeah.
so, as Engage launches, and obviously it's very useful for professionals who, not just may be in marketing, not just in community engagement, or any civic work. Where do you see Engage going in the future? Obviously, you guys are in
Yeah,
the, obviously in the beginning or newer phase.
yeah,
What's the 1 to 3 year picture look like for where Engage is going to go?
sure. Well, I think the clearest one is that we will obviously continue using it for our own projects. We do multiple, 5, 6 projects a year with different civic groups, for example. So we'll use it for those. And a lot of those do touch several thousand people at a time. So obviously, we're hoping that there is some brand recognition that grows and that future civic clients will come to expect a similar level of service. So I think that's kind of a baseline. Beyond that, I think that's part of the reason why architecture firms don't usually create software. They certainly don't create SaaS software very often. You don't often see architecture folk on podcasts. I mean, that's kind of an outlier, and we're kind of an outlier in that way. So hopefully we can stand out a bit and have this product, have Engage grow into a standalone business, if you will, where people use it all around the world for whatever businesses and projects they have going. That would be my dream, right? Is to see it be used by a lot of other people. And I'll be honest, right? We still have work to do on it. There's still ideas that I get practically every day on how we can improve something. But, I think that's maybe the beauty of software is that we can continue to improve it versus like a building where once it's done, it becomes really expensive to make changes. So I see a situation where we continue to improve it over the years. Hopefully, we get users who give us feedback and use it for interesting things that we have not considered, and it becomes a part of who we are, basically.
If someone was to ask you that, I don't want to say is not just unfamiliar with Engage, but maybe just unfamiliar with this kind of tool that people can use for their business. Because again,
Sure.
getting feedback, what would you say are the top three bottlenecks that
Mm,
uh, a product like Engage solves for that maybe some business owners aren't aware of?
right. Well, a pretty universal need of any business is to talk to customers in some capacity, right? Whether that's in person, walking in the door, or social media, or email, somehow you need to gather the contact information and reach out to those customers and ask what is either working for them, why they are a customer, or ask them why they are not a customer. And a survey tool like Engage is a pretty established and rudimentary aspect of that. I mean, even if you literally just have an email capture question and that's the only question you have, that can at least begin to build some sort of email list of a business. And I'm sure a lot of your users probably know this, but despite social media, email lists are still the most profitable method for most e-commerce business. I mean, it's hard to compete with email. It's not going anywhere. We use it every day, etc. So building the email list is pretty much a minimum for most, or I would say all e-commerce businesses, but most businesses, period. So I would say that's one. Um, Beyond that, though, there's a gamification of a lot of things. For example, when we do surveys, if you just send a question with no image and it's, like a single sentence, I mean, you'll be lucky to get 1% of people to respond. But if you can make it more visually engaging, the sticky notes questions, for example, are a relatively novel approach. Most people have not that on their computer or phone before. So that also increases engagement. So if you can increase that 1% to 5 or 10%, you've done yourself a huge favor. So I would say spending a little bit of time and investing in something that is a little bit more novel could be helpful for you. And then probably the last one is not everything is going to work. I'm not saying that Engage will solve all of their problems at one time. And there are many other survey tools that are excellent. Typeform is a great example. It's been around for many years and it's very well designed. So I would say that it's one piece of a larger puzzle, and be open to experimenting. And honestly, that's what we had to do, and that's what we're continually doing, even with our own product. So it has other features that I won't even mention here, but they're based off of that experimentation.
No, I think that's awesome. And going back to something that you said before, email is not going anywhere. And
No.
something that my wife and I always talk about is the value of your business is actually the value of your email list. If if you're not doing things like using something like Engage to not only create that commonality or that connection between you and your audience that's capturing
Right.
their email, right? And then you're able to nurture them offline. Social media, and this is just a reminder to anyone listening or watching, social media is rented land. You can open up all the social accounts you want, but if
Yeah.
something changes with those platforms, you're SOL. Like there's nothing you can do about it because you don't own it. But the one thing
Right.
that you do own is your email list. So I think this is just another beautiful way of socially engaging the right audience with something like Engage that's going to get them onto that email list where they could be nurtured later on down the line,
Right.
and again, taking them up that ladder of value to purchasing something that you offer, whether it's a product, a good, a service, anything like that.
Yeah.
So Josh,
Yeah.
as we wind down, what's your final message to the audience today
Mhm.
about, if they've never used an interaction-based software or tool like Engage, what's
Yeah.
your final message that you want to kind of get across to them to why, and again, the beautiful thing about Engage, there is a free trial. You don't have to pay for it right away. Um,
Oh, yeah. You don't even really have to pay for it ever, as long as you keep below the usage limits. So yeah, okay. So one kind of parting piece. Um, yeah, I'll keep it more entrepreneurial. I think we operate within a very, very specific niche, right? From architecture and then urban planning and then civic projects requiring community engagement. So we're like, very, very, very far down the funnel. And I think that's okay. I used to have these visions that we were going to be like the next, Facebook or whatever and make billions of dollars. And I was like, that would be great. And I, need investors and I need venture capital and all this kinds of stuff. But honestly, there are other ways to have a successful business. And your investors can be clients. They can be, a spouse who maybe works while you are getting your business off the ground. They can be, maybe a specific partner that you bring on board for, some reason. So I would say my advice is to not be afraid to go into these niches where you can add a lot of value, because there's money to be made there, there's personal satisfaction to be made there. You can contribute a lot to, this specific area. And then even in that area, right, you can identify opportunities, for example, like community engagement and creating Engage to solve our problems, which may also have broader appeal. And so you can kind of grow up from there if the opportunity comes. So look for the opportunities, and there's always riches in the niches, is that common phrase. But it's true. There are riches in the niches.
I love that saying. So, Josh,
Yeah.
before I get to my final question, if people want to learn
Yeah.
more about you, Engage, where's the best way for them to contact you, either online or social, to find out more?
Sure. So the easiest way is to go to engagebygo.com. So engagebygo.com, and you can sign up for free. Again, it's free to use. See if it works for you. Have some fun with it.
Awesome. Love that. So for all the listeners, all that information that Josh just shared will be in the show notes, the description, and the email broadcast that goes out to all of you. Josh, final question before we sign off. What does success truly mean to you?
I'm still figuring that out a little bit, but I would say I enjoy being part of a community. And so I would say investing the time, effort, sometimes money to be in a community that I value or care about. For example, I really do love living here in Chicago. There's so many things to do. Specifically, the architecture community here is very good. We have some of the largest membership numbers in the country. So it's worth it, right, for me to spend more money to live downtown and to have my firm here and things like that. But that same principle applies to a lot of the other communities I'm part of. So investing in the community that you care about, and hopefully it's one that invests back into you.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, you got to give in order to get, and I think that's the big message there. So, Josh, wanted
Yeah,
to
of
thank you again for being on the show today,
course.
sharing all the knowledge and wisdom that you did, but also for creating Engage because obviously you did it with a heart of service, wanting to help business owners and obviously the other niches that you're involved in. So, again, trailblazing in our own way, and you're certainly doing that. So, thank you again for doing what you're
Appreciate it.
doing and for being here today.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Scott.
Absolutely. So again, all the information about Engage and Josh will be in the show notes, the description, and the email broadcast. Again, appreciate all of you so much. Don't forget, support the podcast. If you're on Spotify, please subscribe. If you're on iTunes, please subscribe and leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you love most and what you would like to hear more of. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days. Love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you could, please support this podcast by hopping over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any place that you're listening to this. Leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved most and what you would like to hear more of. But also, if you would like to learn how to take your business to the next level, whether it's using LinkedIn or working directly with myself and Nancy in our intimate group coaching programs, you can head over to www.thetimetogrowth.com or scottaaron.net to learn more. Thank you again for your support, love, and gratitude, and I'll talk to you soon.